Start recording? Yeah, that's all good.
I'm recording? Yeah, I'm recording too. Clear my throat once more. That was for you, Sean. Right, there we go. Ready?
That's fucking delightful.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav and you join us on the back of Sunderland's 1-0 win at the Stadium of Light over Burnley, which sends us to the top of the table. Let's end it there. Let's just end it after three games. Yeah, three games, three wins, 3 clean sheets. Doesn't get much better than that. Joining us is Martin. Hey mate.
Hello mate, yeah, no, it's perfect really. You couldn't have... Tell you what, like if you're going to script the game against Burnley, if you're going to write the script, you couldn't have done it any better, could you?
Nah.
Seriously.
Nah, no way.
It was spot on.
You literally couldn't have written it better in terms of the man who took up the mantle and scored the goal. The fact that it was first v second at this early stage in the season. We'll not get too carried away, but you know, in all the coverage, it's all everyone's mentioned. First v second could already be a promotion 6-pointer.
Yeah.
Like we're 3 games in, I don't want to get too carried away. And then obviously Jack Clarke's departure was announced into the evening, wasn't it?
It was.
And that certainly softened the blow of the fact that we won the game and it was Mundle who came up with the goods. But what a performance. Again, very different type of performance to the other two that we've won this season. But one which I think lends itself to when you're the home team and you've got a big raucous crowd there. That's what we want to see sometimes, just backs to the wall, grinding it, defending at times, showing real quality early in the game with wave after wave of attack. I mean, every interview I've heard with, obviously, Scott Parker, the centre-half, who I can't remember the name of, but they were talking about how really they couldn't have complained about going behind because really Sunderland were all over them. And that's what you want to see, is just a team which really works hard together. So it was a good performance, and let's not forget, this is Burnley, who I think many people are expecting to get one of the top 2 spots. We talked about it on the preview, about how this is one of the teams where you're virtually guaranteeing they're going to be one of them first or second places, because just the quality they've got. Yeah, we might have caught them on a bad day because of the amount of traffic coming out of there this week. Lots of players leaving and lots of players declaring themselves unable to play because they've got moves lined up and whatever. But we had our own problems this week with Jack Clarke's departure. That won't have helped. And what we saw was a very efficient, very organised Sunderland team who, as we kind of predicted on the preview show, responded really well to what's probably been a tough couple of days for them. So I'm absolutely delighted with how we played, how we showed up, and I think it really does bode well for the rest of the season. Now, if we can turn up like that against a good team and get the 3 points and get a clean sheet, it certainly makes you look at the rest of the season and think, well, why can't we do that against most teams? So I just think it was a cracking performance, cracking win, and yeah, delighted, absolutely delighted.
I think there's a few things to pick out of that, right? So I think there was loads of talk, wasn't there, about the Burnley team and the players leaving Burnley and, as you say, people refusing to play and all that sort of stuff. The team that they played, the first 11, I think, had 4 changes to the game that started the previous week against Cardiff. And one of those changes was them bringing Trafford back into goal, who's the first choice keeper. So, this wasn't a team that had 9 players out of the first 11. There was 3 players missing that played the last game. I think there was 2 or 3 players difference from the Luton game that started the season. So let's not have anybody tell us that this was against a really weakened Burnley side, because it wasn't, right?
Did you get the impression listening, by the way, because I listened to the interview with Parker, in the interview with one of their players, and it did feel like, and even Crabber's asking the questions, It was like kind of like lining up excuses for them, really.
But when you look at it, and I know, look, there's all sorts of things going on behind the scenes there. They've got an American owner who seems to like to change the squad every summer and get rid of a load of people and bring some new people in like they do in American sports rather than in English football. But, on paper, they still had a really, really strong team out against us. So, let's not get drawn into this sort of conversation about us playing a weakened Burnley side. Now, look, they probably will be stronger going into the season when they're settled and they can control the players that are moving in and out. There's obviously a lot of turmoil there. And the fact that they have players who are refusing to play, if you contrast that to, we've had a difficult week, I guess, with Jack Clarke leaving. And it was a good day, very bad news, wasn't it, really, at the end of it when we were able to announce that. But the fact that he was welcomed to the stadium like before the game to obviously say goodbye to everybody, and the club were happy for him to come in. And you look at the Instagram comments after the game, Jack Clarke's commenting on Mundle's goal and all that sort of stuff. He's left with good feeling, right? So it's not a case of all the players are pissed off because he's gone, or the club's pissed off with him because he's gone. He's gone with the club's best wishes. He's gone amicably. I say he's welcomed back into the club before the game to say goodbye to people and all that sort of stuff. And I think that speaks volumes about everything going on behind the scenes. The fact that you go, look, we don't want you to go, but if you are going, shake your hand, go on, best wishes, all that sort of stuff. So I think that, compared to what Burnley are going through, say with players who are refusing to play and desperate for moves and all that sort of stuff, speaks volumes in terms of how both clubs are being run behind the scenes. And then for Mundle to step up and put in that sort of performance that he'd put in, because if he'd come in for Clarke, who was injured, we'd be sitting here going, geez, Jack Clarke's got a job in his hands to get back into the team. You can't drop Mundle after that. We're going to have to find a place for both of them, or work Clarke back into the side somewhere else, or put Mundle somewhere else in the team, because you couldn't drop him after that. And if we'd signed Mundle for 20 million quid from Italy and he played that game, you think, bloody hell, we're going to be all right with him playing left wing. He looks a player. There was, there was so many positives. I think come a different test. But I think you talked about the backs to the wall stuff and the defending and how we press and all that sort of stuff. The first 25-30 minutes, I think that's the best football we've played at Stadium Life from the starting first whistle that I can remember for an awful long time. Like even against Sheff Wed, we started slowly. We had 10 minutes or so where they were a bit on top, and it looks as if we were in for a tough game, and we eventually worked that out. But I thought we started off so well. And, yes, it was 1-0, and yes, we had to hang on, but, it should have been 2 or 3-0 at half time, and that could have been game over.
And again, Mundle was brilliant. And I listened to his interview with the club and with Nick Barnes, and the buzzword at the minute, not just coming from him, but pretty much everybody in the team, the manager, the buzzword at the minute is consistency. Everyone talking about consistency constantly. And with him, it was, well, I've had to be consistent in training, not just on the pitch, but in training. And there's been it's like a renewed focus on, if you work hard in training, the Saturday will be easy.
Yeah.
You've got to work hard on the training ground. And Mundle's an example of that. I went to Bradford in pre-season, and it was a second string with Mundle on the left wing. And it was a rubbish performance generally, even for a pre-season game. But he stood out a mile. He looked like a totally different animal to the one that we saw the year before. Fitter, stronger, looked a bit bigger. He looked sharper than everyone else on the pitch, both Bradford and us. I just felt that night even, I thought, ooh, he's got something about him. So I wasn't at all bothered when I knew he was going to be playing. I was quite confident. Seen a lot of people were a bit down on it, saying, oh, he's not ready, he's not there. Look, he'll have known all summer there was a possibility that Jack Clarke was going to leave and that he had to be ready for this moment. So he's known. And I'm sure there's been conversations behind the scenes. I'm sure when he's sat down one-to-one with the manager, they've talked about this and said, look, your chance will come. It's going to come. You need to be ready for it. And we talked about this last week with Mayenda taking his chance in the Sheff Wed game. But Mundle is, again, an example to the other players, the young players waiting to come in. That's how you take a chance. You're not always going to be able to predict when you're going to get it, so you have to be on the ball. And I thought even before his goal, he was great. He put some great crosses into the box. There was that one where I think Chris Rigg really should have scored.
Should have, yeah.
There was another one which flashed across the goal. He'd had another shot which kind of skewed wide. He looked like he was going to do something, and that's the biggest compliment you can pay him, really. And I liked that after the game, Regis Le Bris talked about already having the options in the door when it comes to replacing players. It was something along the lines of people talk about, needing to recruit to replace a player, but sometimes it's under your nose already. And I always felt that was the case. Look, it's not the glamorous, sexy thing to do, but it's long-term succession planning in place. Like, we did it with Ross Stewart when we signed him. We knew Charlie White was going to leave at the end of that season. And while Stewart was injured, he hadn't been playing for a good team and all this, we knew that come the summer we would need him. And we got him in early. We got him bedded in. We got him used to the other players, the surroundings. This is another example of that happening. We knew Clarke would probably leave at some point. I'm guessing with the length of terms left on his deal and the fact that there'd been significant interest from top division clubs, not just in the January, but the season before as well. They will have known that it was coming, and they brought in another player to get him ready for this. And that's what we saw on the pitch on Saturday, was a lad who's been prepared for this moment for, 6 months?
No, well, that's right.
But they'll never get credit for that, by the way, because, again, it's not glamorous and it's not sexy.
Wait.
People like to see the club go out and spend money, and look, they want to see a new left winger come in. But I just think I'm really happy to see Romaine Mundle come in and do what he did. I think the majority of people will have been really happy with it. But it's that constant overarching criticism of the regime. People wouldn't give them credit for that, I don't think, those people. So I'm glad that moment happened. It just showed everybody that the lad's here.
Yeah.
He's going to be good and he's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And hey, what a performance from him. I just think he was brilliant.
But I think it's quite telling, isn't it, that Spurs wanted to keep him last summer. So when he was out of contract at Spurs, it wasn't because Spurs didn't want to renew his contract. They were trying to tie him down.
Yeah.
And he made the decision to leave Spurs because he wanted football. We tried to sign him last summer and he went off to Belgium. And we were able to get him out there in January. And Jack Clarke's departure would have formed part of those conversations in January. Get yourself in. We'll have 6 months where there's not pressure on you to come in to play, but you'll get a bit of opportunity, you'll get a bit of game time. And then whether it's in the summer or in January or next summer, Clarke will be off. So it's perfect. And we've seen it with Trey Hume. Trey Hume was here for a year before he was a first team regular. Right? And that's the ideal. And when you get these players who come in and they don't get into the first team and make an immediate impression, that's why you can't just write them off. Go, he's shit. He's never gonna make it. Like, you've got to keep an open mind about these people, because that's the thing about bringing young players in. They're going to develop. They're going to get better. And when the time comes, you hope that they're right. And look, you're not going to get it right all the time. We are going to have signed players, and we'll probably see some leave this week who we've signed who haven't stepped up to that level. Like Barr's the one. Talking about consistency. Barr's the one who's been given so many chances over the past 2 years, and it hasn't shown a degree of consistency in his performances. And I think, we probably will see him leave, because, he probably would have hoped, with the scenario of Jack Clarke leaving, if Jack Clarke left, for example, in January, Barr would have probably hoped that he would be the player to get that position. But he's miles away from it. So that consistency is really important. And look, that consistency, to me, that's what actually makes the difference between players who are all right at Championship level and brilliant at Premier League level. All footballers at that level have skills. They can all pass the ball, they can all shoot. But it's being able to hit the target 9 times out of 10 rather than 5 times out of 10. It's being able to make you tackle 9 times out of 10. And it's all that sort of stuff. And I think if you look at how we play, pressing, and it's not all out gung-ho pressing, it's kind of done in waves, isn't it? It's kind of, you press for a bit and then you step back off and get your breath back and then press again. And it actually enables us to sustain that throughout the 90 minutes rather than running that, blowing out of our arses after 45. So it's the consistency in the mental bit of the game as well as the technical bit of the game that's massively important for what Le Bris is trying to do with us. Things didn't quite go our way in the first half, because we could have and probably should have been 2 or 3-0 up. And we 1-0 up, which is a great goal, great finish. Very Jack Clarke-esque. But it was a completely different challenge in the second half. And we had to really meet that. And I thought we did it really well. Like, Burnley had quite a lot of possession compared to what we had. Burnley had more passes than we had. And we talked about, haven't we, about like Burnley, the amount of fouls that they made just to break out our play and break out our breaks, but in positions where the referee was never going to book them. They just broke the game up so much, and it was a completely different sort of game for us to manage to the Chef Wedge one, but I thought we did fantastically well.
We did, and I think Burnley got a bit of a shock. They were trying to do what they did when they got promoted last time and when they were in the Premier League last year. They were trying to build attacks from the back with quick passing around the back. But, I mean, for us, it must have been really straightforward to prepare for, actually, because Burnley are a team that they're actually pretty predictable, and that's what got them relegated. They wouldn't change their style of play.
Yeah.
They dropped back into the Championship, and Scott Parker's trying to kind of keep that flow going because that's what worked for them last time under Company. But for us, it must have been really easy to prepare for because we knew they were going to do that. And for me, to my mind, that kind of team is the type of team that we will always succeed against because our pressing is just so good. It's like, well, if you're going to knock it around the back and try and keep the ball, we're going to make you make mistakes. And so many times they came very, very close to sort of conceding possession in dangerous areas. I think if we'd pressed them a little bit more beyond that, you could have seen another couple of goals. And look, I think whilst Burnley have got a very talented team, I mean, you made a good point before, whilst they've had disruption this week, you look at that team on paper, it's still worth an absolute fortune.
No, that's exactly right.
They're still going to win a lot of games playing with that team. Even though it's an expensively assembled side, particularly for the Championship, I just think if you haven't got the players to play that style, you're going to get caught out eventually. And yeah, they've got players who are decent on the ball, but again, it doesn't matter how good you are on the ball if you've got 4 or 5 players just charging you down and relentlessly trying to win the ball back. And I saw the stats at half time, came up on when I was watching the highlights back, and they'd won 9 second balls to our 1, which I found really strange. I was like, well, I kind of felt like we won the majority of them duels, but it was the interceptions that we were winning. It wasn't like we were getting into physical 50-50s, the ball dropping at a great height and us having to win second and third balls. It was more we were getting in the way of their passes. We were just being horrible to play against, basically. And again, it's just become a theme of the performances we've seen since the start of the season. And for me, it's a fantastic tactic because whilst every team at the minute seems to be trying to play out from the back, no matter how good the players are, you know, when you're playing against a team who press like we do, doesn't matter how good you are at passing the ball around, you're going to get caught. You're going to get caught all over the pitch. That was really what was the difference for me. When we didn't have the ball in that first half an hour, we were brilliant. When we did have the ball in that first half an hour, we were brilliant. The game plan at the minute is just brilliant. I keep using that word brilliant, but it's true. I can't express just how much I love it. And again, it comes back to something I said last week. It really does lend itself to playing at the stadium like in front of 40,000 people, because when a player charges down an opposition player and wins it back, it gets everybody off their arses screaming. And that momentum and that atmosphere then causes the team to really build momentum. And you could see Burnley at times visibly, they were shaking. They didn't really know what was going on. And these are good players, again. They're good players, but I don't think it matters how good you are when that's happening to you. I mean, if we can maintain these sort of levels throughout the season in terms of our fitness and pressing and intensity, we're going to win the majority of our games because we've got quality when we do have the ball. We've got a lot of good players with a lot still to come in as well. I mean, you look at the bench, Dan Ballard, Alan Brown, sitting on the bench. Poor Jan Pavera, he thought he was going to come on, stood on the... Bless it, we were laughing at him, mate, because he spent the entire second 45 minutes warming up with his shirt on, with a bib over it. It was one of them, you know, the classic, like, if I warm up enough in front of the manager, you'll notice and bring us on. And then he was just about to come on, then Dan Neil got sent off. Yeah. But, I mean, you look at the quality we've got there. We've got the new striker, Isidore, to come in. Whoever else we sign as the window progresses, because there's bound to be a couple more as well. Yeah. I just think it's the whole picture looks good at the minute. And this performance, again, it wasn't a classic 90-minute performance, but there was aspects of it where you look at it and you go, I really enjoyed that. Like the way we defended right at the end of the game, where it was just balls getting pumped into the box and we won every header, every duel, and it was getting the crowd going. And then when I think we won a couple of headers right just before the final whistle, and when the referee blew his whistle, you saw the players, they sprinted straight to the south stand. They were because they knew just how much it meant, because everybody was in it together. It was all that you talk about, a 12th man on the pitch, but the fans were a 12th man because every header we were heading it with them, every kick we were kicking it with them. And this could be a really important 3 points come the end of the season, couldn't it? I mean, you look at the lay of the land as the season goes on, and I do think Burnley will be up there. So if we're going to have a good season, this is a massive 3 points again. And I think whilst we had all the noise this week in the media and the podcasts and all that talking about just how good Sunderland are all of a sudden, they've woke up and realised we've got good players again. That's only going to happen more and more as this week goes on. And I just hope we don't get too carried away. But at the same time, we've got to harness that sort of positivity and momentum, haven't we? Because we've got a hard game coming up. We've got other hard games coming up after that. We've got to harness this momentum we're building as a club.
Well, that's right. And I think the next few games are going to pose a different challenge, aren't they, as well? Because I think we've played against the 3 teams in Cardiff, Sheffield Wednesday and Burnley, who do like to play out from the back to some extent and pass it around. We've got the opportunity to close them down and press them. And, playing against other teams who might be a bit more direct, might be a bit more content with us having more possession, will present a different challenge. I think, how we played and how we were structured. And you compare that to, remember that Blackburn game last season in April, end of March, early April. We got beat 5-1, Stadium of Light. There's 8 or 9 players who started that game, started the last game. And just the way that we're structured, the way that we're disciplined, the game plan, it's light years apart from what we're doing. It's pretty much the same players, but it's just light years apart from what we were doing last year. So, we've got set up in a really positive way. As I say, I don't think it was a perfect performance by any stretch, but it showed an awful lot of positivity. But I think, like my ender, for example, while I sang his praises against Chef Wed, and deservedly so, I think in the first half against Burnley, he had one touch. He had one touch of the ball in the first half. Now, he did an awful lot of good work off the ball in leading the press and doing all that sort of stuff. But, for a team that was so dominant in that first half, for your central striker to just have one touch in that 45 minutes, it shows that we've got, we do need strengthening there. As we talked after Clarke's or rumoured departure at that point, but, whether we bring in a left winger. But I think, with Mundle, with Tommy Watson on the bench, which I thought was interesting, as opposed to, Barr and Aushish were left off the bench and Watson was put on the bench. So it kind of shows in that sort of ranking that Watson's probably the next one in line for that left wing. Isidore can apparently play out there as well. So I would sort of question whether we will bring in a left winger this week, or we actually do need to bring in a left winger, because if we've got this succession plan coming in and Mundle's stepped up and took his chance, it'd be pretty unfair on him to bring in a 10 million quid left winger this week and put him straight into the side. So I think, getting that striking position, to me, is kind of almost that final piece in the jigsaw to take us through to January.
Yeah, and I just think you've got to think of what the message it sends to the players is when
that's right.
You've got Mundle and you've got Watson who've grafted their arse off. Like Tommy Watson, let's not forget, he can't have done more than what he's done over this last sort of 18 months to get noticed. He's absolutely killing it in the 21s. Every time you watch them play or you look at the scoreline, he's normally on the score sheet, or he's got assists, or he's played well. Like, for a young kid, he can't have done much more. He's in that bracket with Chris Rigg. He's represented England. He's like one of the brightest talents we've got, and he plays that position. And you've also got ROMAINE MUNDLE, who, as we've said already, I would imagine a big part of the reason he even came to Sunderland will have been because we told him, look, this is your position once Jack Clarke does leave eventually. So what message would that send to the other players, or even those two, if we just went out and signed another winger who could play that position? For a club who is trying to market itself as being academy-centric, young player-focused, we have proper succession planning for young players, that sends the wrong message, total wrong message. And I'm not saying we shouldn't strengthen where we can, because I don't think that's the case. I think in other positions, like you mentioned, the striker position, it's a little bit more defined because we can clearly see that we need strength up there, and hopefully Isidore can bring that. I know you mentioned he can play off the left, but the impression I got from listening to him talk is that he's come here as a striker, hasn't he? But I still think, we could be looking at one more in that position too. But then you look around the rest of the pitch and you think, even in sort of the midfield positions, you've got lads waiting to come in. If we went out and, you mentioned this last week, if we went out and signed a holding midfield player, at start of the summer, we were all like, yeah, we need a holding midfielder. But if you went and done that now, what would that say to Chris Rigg and Joe Bellingham and, Dan Neil and Alan Brown? If we go out and sign another player when I don't think we really need one. So, we've got to look after the players we've got. That's not to say we can't strengthen, like I say, but even look on the right wing. Patrick Roberts has had a brilliant start of the season.
Oh, super.
We haven't really talked about him very much in terms of this game. Made best player on the park. The only thing he was missing was that final ball in front. Like, he had a couple of chances where there were like shots and stuff, and that still isn't there yet. But I mean, another assist, and for me, the best player on the park. You look at that performance, and then you look at Jan Paveda coming through as well, he's not come here because he wants to sit on the bench.
No.
He had a loan out last season and done brilliant at Chef Wed. So he knows he's good enough in the Championship, and all we've heard are positives. So if we went and signed another right winger, what does that say to them too? Do you know what I mean? So I don't think we're going to see a great amount of change before the end of the window in terms of incomings, we will see players come in, but they might not necessarily all be starters. There might be more young players who
No, that's right.
we can maybe give a chance to down the line. This constant, we've always got to be thinking ahead. You know, you look at Cirkin and Hume, how good they are. Eventually, someone's going to come in for them. So we've got to be prepared. We haven't got backup fullbacks, really. So we've got to be prepared for that. You know, if in January, Trey Hume, for me, Dennis Cirkin's been the best. I said the start of the season, best left back in the league. He's shown it. 3 games in, he's been outstanding. Someone's going to take notice if he stays fit, exactly. And we have to be prepared for that eventuality. I'm not saying he's going to leave, but if he does, we need to be prepared. So
no, that's exactly it.
We've got to be prepared for all eventualities.
Just talking about Isidore, I think it is. I've got so much time for him celebrating the win with every play.
That was great, wasn't it?
Absolutely superb. But it shows what sort of character he is. He seems delighted to be here. He said in his interview, it made us laugh. He said, I phoned my wife and told her we're going to Sunderland. She didn't have a choice. But he wants to be here. And I think if we get Mendy in or get Simic in, I think we'll probably get one of those two in this week. I think any midfield reinforcement kind of depends on Ekwa. If we cash in on him, which I wouldn't be surprised if we did. I think if he goes, we'll probably bring somebody else in. And as you say, the 2 fullback positions, we talked about it previously, but I think we do need backup in both left back and right back, because we haven't got anybody credible to come in there and sort of do the same sort of job as Cirkin and Hume do. But in terms of starters, you're looking at a striker to add to those, and if you can keep the vast majority of them fit, quite exciting really about how far we could go.
Yeah. Even, I was talking about Watson there being the natural successor down that left-hand side. We've got other players in the academy side, in the under 21s who, Harrison Jones played in that League Cup game.
That's exactly,
captain of the 21s, had a brilliant, he's a lad who he's been in the academy since he was a kid, lifelong Sunderland fan. If he's doing the business and working hard and training and performing for the 21s, then why would you go out and sign another kid to be that person in that role? For me, that's the whole point of having a Cat 1 academy, is that you have good players coming through who can plug the gaps and be your backup. I'm not saying he might not be a championship ready midfield player yet, but he's not going to play. We're not expecting him to play 30, 40 games this season. He might just come off the bench a few times. He might start a couple of games later in the season, in the second half of the season, providing he keeps doing well. We've got to think of these players, and we've got to think of these things when we're recruiting. And there will be people who go, the penny pinch, and they've never spent any money, blah blah blah. Look, this is why we have an academy. I'm quite happy for these lads to come in and drop in. But again, just to round off on the Burnley performance. It was brilliant. 3 points that I think, when I seen the fixture list, I never seen coming. We couldn't have started the season better. I mean, it's been repeated a lot this week, but I think it's the best start we've ever had to a season, technically, because we've won all 3 games without conceding a goal. First time in the club's history we've ever done that. We've just got to keep it up. We've got to keep it up. And I'm just looking forward to the rest of this week. A few days before the transfer window ends, there's going to be a lot going on, I'm sure, in terms of incomings and outgoings. But we couldn't have placed ourselves better. Because when you're going towards the end, if you're a club in turmoil, like you look at Everton in the Premier League, who've been battered the first few games, it's a lot harder to try and convince players to come to your club, isn't it? When you haven't had a good start. We're sat top of the league going at the end of the transfer window, which we will be. That's a great advert for the football club to anybody we're trying to bring here. And that could help us get a couple of deals over the line that otherwise might not have got, towards the end of the window.
No, that's exactly
and we'll talk
right.
about all these things, I think, when we preview the next game, I guess. But happy days, isn't it? Anyways, mate, do you want to round off with some quick fire questions?
That's my favourite.
We've got in the Twitter replies. Thanks everyone who replied on Twitter to our plea for topics and questions. We'll start off with Josh Wilkinson, former Roker Report contributor. Hiya, Josh. He says, easy to say this now, but do you agree that we can now be in the conversation for winning the league?
If we've gone 10 games, 10 wins, haven't conceded, then yes, but bit early for me.
Yeah, I really want to. But you do have to kind of caveat that we've got 43 games left. There's a long way to go. But we've shown we've got something about us. But there's always one team, isn't there, starts the season like a house on fire that you don't really expect. I mean, maybe that team's Watford. A lot of pundits were predicting that they would struggle this year, and they've had a really good start too.
I think that's probably it. I think people are probably a lot more surprised with Watford than us. But hey, look, I think if you look at the teams that get promoted, they've got a good structure, a good tactical style. Players know the jobs. We talked last week about, Clarke going, whoever comes into that position will know the role, know his job. It's well defined. I think, you've got all the things that you look for in a promotion winning side. We can kind of marry up to a lot of them. But come back with a question in 10 or 15 games time and I'll give you a more definitive answer on that one.
Yeah. Ethan Zombek says, do you play Brown deepest for Neil next game? Ekwa seems most natural but hasn't been allowed to play in another midfield role this year so far. That's an interesting one. I don't think Ekwa will be here, if I'm honest.
I don't.
That's my prediction. I think he'll be gone by the time we play Portsmouth. So I think it will be Brown. I think that's just a like for like.
Most probably. Like, we haven't talked about Dan Neil sending off, which was bloody stupid. Like, both bookings were bloody stupid.
Do you reckon the first one was... I thought the first one was harsh. I don't think he really does much.
They've been told this season, if you kick the ball away, if you touch the ball after the referee's given a free kick, you're in the book. It's not a surprise. Yeah. By the letter of the law, it's a yellow card. Now, you can argue whether it was harsh or not, but by the letter of the law, it's a yellow card. The referee booked a Burnley player for the same thing earlier. So, you can't complain about it. And the second one, at the time I thought, it's a decent foul to give away, but to get sent off,
who made it.
And you realise who made it. And you look at the replay and you've got a couple of players covering anyway. I just thought it was mindless. And, I think actually Dan Neil probably had his best game of the season against Burnley. I thought he started the season a little bit slowly. We had the same thing against Borough last season, didn't he, where he kind of got himself sent off needlessly. And as captain, there's an awful lot more responsibility on the shoulders this season than there was previously. So hopefully that's a lesson that hasn't cost us. It's cost him a game. And hopefully that's the last we see of that sort of stuff from him. But in terms of next week against Portsmouth, I think Brown will play that more defensive role and sit there, and Bellingham and Rigg will play sort of ahead of him. The other option that we have is with Ballard coming back in, whether 09 would push up, and it really depends on how Le Bris sees 09 longer term, because I think we haven't talked about Alese against Burnley, and I thought Alese was absolutely fantastic. I think he's getting better and better at centre half every game this season. There was one point his pace when he came across the cover 09 in the first half was brilliant. And I think if you had, you can't. I just don't think you can change the defence after 3 games of not conceding a chance, never mind a goal, really. But you're kind of looking at it and going, well, longer term, if you're going to pick your defence, you can make a strong case for Ballard and Alese sort of being your centre half pairing. So I think they actually complement each other really well. So it's whether Le Bris has seen something in 09, because we've talked about it so much, he's never played in that really defensive midfield role. Whether for a game, an away game especially, whether he kind of sees benefit in 09 coming in there. Portsmouth will probably be a little bit more direct. He can kind of drop in as a third centre half if needed. It's potentially an interesting selection next week. On face value, you go with Brown, but I think there could be a curveball.
I just think the point you made there about the fact we've barely conceded a shot, never mind a goal, is you can't change the defence after that start.
No, I agree with you. I think it depends how you look at Neil's role in that defensive setup in terms of screening. So can Brown in an away game like that do the same screening and protect the back four that Neil can do? And look, it's another possibility. I think all things being equal, Brown will sit there.
Yeah. Speaking of Alese, we've had a question in from another former Roker Report contributor, Jim Holmes. He says, not sure I've seen a turnaround from complete and utter garbage to an organised, confident side this fast since Keane was here. Have yous? And then he said, Alese has looked monumental at times. I can't remember one either, to be honest.
No, it's a struggle to think. I think the only thing that could probably come close since then is when O'Neill took over. I think he made an instant impact after we were in a complete mess when Bruce left, and O'Neill came and got us really set up well, and we looked a completely different side. But I think when you look at the run that we had at the end of last season, well, from January until May, which was diabolical. And as I said, with the Blackburn game last season, you look at that lineup, there was 8 7 or 8 players from that team played. I think it was against Chef Wed. We didn't have a new signing in the lineup, did we? So the turnaround, I say that's down to Le Bris, isn't it? His setup, his tactics, his motivation. So no, it's astronomical, really. It's fantastic.
Yeah. That leads us nicely into the next one. It's almost like your line needs up for us. Adam Baker has said, Regis Le Bris, the most underrated head coach in the Championship? Discuss. Possibly. I think so. I remember one of the Championship, I think it might have been second tier, one of those podcasts anyways, did a sort of ranked all the managers during the summer, and he was ranked fairly low, and I was like, I don't really understand why. They don't know anything about him. So maybe he is underrated. I think people are taking notice now. Obviously, when we were on Sky last week, I noticed that they really went in on him in terms of like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. So I think people are, it's hard to ignore really when you look at something you just talked about there. When you look at how different we are to the team that ended off last season, and nothing in terms of personnel's really changed in the starting 11, you've got to look straight to the manager because it's his influence. It's his influence, isn't it? You can just it's painted all over the team. Like this is a well coached, well drilled side, led by somebody who is clearly very astute, but also led by someone who doesn't get caught up in the momentum that kind of comes with winning games. He's like, even after the game this weekend, all he wanted to talk about was, well, I enjoyed the first 25 minutes, but everything after that I'm not too sure about. And I think we could have been more clinical and we should have took more shots, more of our chances. And so he's always looking for ways to improve, even when he's communicating. And I think that's really important. But I suppose that is the sign of a very good coach, because we've had managers in the past who do get caught up in the hysteria of winning a game, you know, and you're then prone to taking your eye off the ball, aren't you, when you're kind of that way. Never get too high, never get too low, just always be somewhere in the middle. And I think that'll serve him well as the season goes on, because we're gonna hit bad form. We're gonna have days where it doesn't come off for us, and that's when his approach will show, because the players won't be looking for him to be a ranter and raver and really try something different on the training ground. A lot of it will be, these are our processes. This is the way we work. We just carry on doing what we do, and that'll see you. I think that'll see us good as the season goes on, because it means that we're not doing anything too radical between a loss and the next game. You're just going to see more of the same, really.
No, that's right. I think the challenge for him is going to come when a team, and it'll be in the not too distant future, plays in a slightly different way to counteract what we're trying to do. So the 3 games that we've had have actually been pretty good in terms of how the opposition is set up. And we've been a surprise package for these teams. Like they haven't got 10 games, 15 games worth of this season's data and stuff to look at to figure us out. So we've been able to catch people by surprise. And we have done an awful lot of good stuff pressing in that final third and getting on top of people and all that sort of thing. The next few games, I think we'll probably see more direct football against us, probably people going a bit longer, not playing around at the back. And it's then how we actually deal with that, because it's going to be a different challenge. And look, he's talked about it, hasn't he? He's talked about the need to find solutions to different challenges during the game that the opposition presents you with. And we've managed to do that all the way through so far this season. So I think, again, it's probably too early to say whether he's the most underrated manager, because we could go the next 7 games and pick up only a couple of points.
Yeah.
But, again, I think in terms of his tactical setup, and I'm struggling to think of a manager at Sunderland who we've actually seen that from to that extent before. I think we saw it to some degree with Alex Neil, where he came in, he got us really structured and rigid and that, but that was quite different. I think the Bris has set us up in it's a little bit more sort of fluid, isn't it? We've got sort of we do different things at different times. It's reactive in a positive way. We're proactive when we can be, but we're reactive as well. And we have solutions to different things. And I can't really ever remember us setting up like that before. Previously we've had our style of play and that's it. And we either win, lose or draw, and we'll stick to our style of play. I think this is different. And it's so intriguing, isn't it, over the next sort of 3 or 4 months, how we actually evolve and progress, because the players will get better with what he's trying to do. Because it's important to remember he's only had, 6 weeks with them? 7 weeks with them?
Yeah.
He hasn't had tons of time.
No. We'll leave it there, I think. We've got a few more there, but we'll circle around at another time. We might come back on the preview and do a few more questions. Thanks for everyone, or to everyone who sent them in. Thank you very much. Cheers, Martin. Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much.
Another win. It's always nice, isn't it?
Hey.
When you think about the shit we had to talk about that second half of last season, coming on here and just feeling so deflated, it's just nice, isn't it? I could literally sit and record for 8 hours, just talk about how great we are. I love it.
It's what we watch for, isn't it? It's what we turn for, to see good players. And I think, again, it makes that such a difference, doesn't it, when you see a group of players who are trying, giving the best, talented footballers. And
just add on that, by the way, that's something basically Scott Parker said. He said he was most disappointed because we basically wanted it more. We were working harder. We said we showed more personality than they did.
Yeah,
and
massive.
That is a huge compliment from an opposition manager for him to turn around and say publicly that his players didn't try as hard as the other team.
Yeah,
and they're a team everyone thinks is going to win the league.
Take that.
Tick in the box for me.
We'll take it.
Exactly. Cheers, mate. Thanks very much. We will be back with a preview before Portsmouth, I'm sure. Make sure you catch everything on rokerreport.sbnation.com and across the social media channels we've got. We'll be back, like I say, through the week with a Pompey preview. Hopefully by that point, there'll be some new players through the door. You never know, some maybe out the other way. We'll probably record again and something stupid will happen like last week. We recorded the Burnley preview and then Jack Clarke left, and then we just went, well, we're going to have to start again now.
Hopefully nothing too stupid.
Let's see what happens this week. Yeah, we'd probably be live on deadline day as well with a Twitter space, so make sure you look out for that. We normally go live for the last couple of hours of the deadline, just reacting to everything that's going on, so keep an eye out for that. It'll be announced on our Twitter page this week, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.